What's up, everybody? Just want to take a quick second and let people know that I am self-supported. I now put all of my episodes on Substack for paid subscribers. I put them up early, and then 24 hours later, I release them to the public on all my platforms. I also have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee, Zelle, a P.O. Box, and Locals, Patreon. And all of these, all of the links are in the show notes of every single episode I put out. So look forward to continuing to, provide great conversations. And thank you all for your continued support. Jim, Matt, welcome back. And let me start off with Jim. Congratulations on the new book.
Well, thanks, Mikey Mike. Yeah, it's nice to have a new one out. I hope people like it. It's funny.
Talk about it a little bit, and I know Matt's got a copy of it sitting right there, but why don't you start off, Jim, by talking about it?
All right. Well, I got the idea for this a few years ago. It took me a year to execute it finally, and it's a novel that's set in 1963, the 2 weeks during and after the Kennedy assassination, and it's about a 12-year-old boy who's been sent to a prep school for fuck-ups. And all the boys are sent home early for Thanksgiving vacation because the Kennedy assassination took place on a Friday. So he goes home to Manhattan, where he commences to have a series of strange misadventures. This novel is also the debut in American fiction of J.D. Salinger as an actual character, a fictionalized character in a book. So that I don't want to, blow too much of the story, but he's in there, and there it is. It's a blast from the past, and it's very funny, even though it's surrounded by the tragic events of the JFK murder.
You've written so many books now. How many is this for you?
I don't know. I lost count actually. It's something like 23, maybe. I don't know, something like that.
It's a
No.
feel.
It's like loading cinder blocks on a truck.
Is the feeling different when you complete these now versus what it was like when you first started?
Oh, well, when you first start, you're full of vainglorious delusions about becoming an overnight sensation. And at my age, I'm well over the idea of becoming an overnight sensation. But, I'm fortunate. I do have an audience. I got a readership, and I got a lot of people who read my blog, and I can sell a book off my blog. And, uh, it's also on Amazon. And my local bookseller has a service for selling autograph copies. But I'm just glad that I'm still able to do it. I'm a little concerned that the novel and maybe the book itself is an endangered cultural artifact that could maybe possibly not be with us that long. But the good news is that there are enough existing books out there to keep the human race busy for 1,000 years. So. And as long as the libraries don't burn down, we're probably okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Matt, you have a copy of it right there?
Yes, I do. I really love this book and called Look, I'm Gone. I'm just a couple years um, younger than the character. So the character is 12 in 1963, and I was one of my first memories as like maybe a 6-year-old is of the Kennedy assassination that the entire country just stopped for a week straight. I mean,
True.
and people, I mean, maybe some people had color TVs, but we had a black and white TV, small thing. And I remember the caissons, the horse-drawn wagons with the coffin going down, I'm not sure what avenue in
Pennsylvania
Washington,
Avenue.
but with the tattoo on the drums that's like the dirge, like bum bum bum, and that was and that it's one of my earliest childhood memories. And little John Kennedy was next to Carolyn or next to
Jackie.
Jackie Onassis, and he saluted. And I remember that. I mean, I remember that. That was And I probably remember it because the entire family was watching this and was like, be quiet, watch this. It's really important.
Yeah,
So
everybody was riveted to the screen for 3 days to the,
couldn't believe it.
yeah.
Couldn't, and even beyond 3 days. So the book begins in this New Hampshire prep school for, for wayward youths whose parents can afford it.
Kids who I say are thriving indifferently.
Yeah, but they're not poor kids because this is not a charity prep school, but the protagonist, who is named Jeff Greenaway, he does well at a poker game, which I thought was very interesting in several levels. He does well at a poker game. So when Kennedy is shot and they close the school early for Thanksgiving, he goes home to New York flush with cash, which was silver, right? So when you think a quarter was a gallon of gasoline, what's a gallon of gasoline now?
Yeah.
A hamburger was 15 cents. So he's got like a bag full, or a cigar box full of quarters mostly, and that's enough to like finance almost 2 weeks of adventure in Manhattan.
Yeah.
That he converting it to dollar bills when it's convenient. But I like that there was like, for, I guess maybe I'm too much of a gold bug, but I'm looking at like the precious metals aspect of that. The guy who comes home with a shoebox full of quarters, and that's enough to like live off of for 2 weeks.
And by the way, that was like 2 years, 2 years before they
Oh
discontinued
yeah, it was
making
real
silver
silver.
coins. Of course, they're just coins. I mean, at that point, it's just money. It's just money.
Right.
And
It was real money. And
the
it's
kid
so
needs to go
ironic
to the bank and exchange them for paper so he can go
for
around.
convenience, but just for convenience. But they were exchangeable because the dollars were silver certificate dollars. It
Yeah.
said it right on the dollars. If you don't like the paper, go to the bank and they'll give you the silver.
And they're worth a lot. There are a couple of times when the kid goes out for dinner in restaurants and takes himself out, and he goes to Luchas at one point, which was a famous German restaurant on 14th Street, and I think he has this magnificent meal that cost him about $8.
Which was right, which would be like a three-digit meal at least.
Yeah,
And people are constantly saying, "Where are you going to get the money for this kid?" Taxi drivers, etc. Where are you going to get the money for this? It's like, don't worry, I got it.
yeah,
And so a shoebox full of quarters today is what, going to buy you a tank of gas maybe. In those days, it would buy you the car,
yeah.
right? And so this happens in 63. In 64, Congress, feeling so bad about Kennedy, even though LBJ, that scoundrel, he's the president now, right? They produced a ton, millions of Kennedy half dollars that are silver Kennedy half dollars. And then 1 year later, they said, you know what? We're short of silver. We're just going to make them out of copper and paint them silver and pretend that it's the same thing. And nobody will notice. And they didn't at the time. Some Rand Paul types might have been talking about fiat currency, but nobody paid any attention. But we were off to the races from that point because that. So Kennedy is killed. 64, let's make millions of Kennedy half dollars out of silver. 65, nah, no more silver. 71, the gold window is closed, and we're completely a fiat system after that. But in 1963, this boy comes back to Manhattan with a shoebox full of quarters. It's enough to finance 2 weeks on the town because it was real money. But I love the book. I don't want to give away plot. It's basically a coming of age story. I was also very precocious. I used to hitchhike all the time back in, not at age 12, but he's in Manhattan, so he's got taxi cabs and money. But I used to hitchhike around Baltimore or more than 100-mile hitchhikes commonly by myself, often late at night in strange cities or rural areas. So I could really relate to Jeff Greenaway's precocious spirit of adventure, his willingness to just get out there. And that's part
Yeah,
of
when
the
I was a
reason.
kid, at that time in New York City, I was at large in the city all the time and on my own. And, from the time I was 8 years old, I was taking subways up to Yankee Stadium on my own.
I don't know Manhattan like you do, but I could really understand because of the detail of your description. Like he's familiar with these museums. I mean, he knows these museums like backwards and forwards.
Yeah, he
He
knows where the
knows
shrunken heads are.
everything, right? And he's very fearless. He meets all kind of characters. I thought it had a little bit of Forrest Gump, not in his IQ, because I'm not going to give away any plot, but he meets a lot of interesting people in a non-probable way, like a Forrest Gump, but it's part of the plot. And the book Catcher in the Rye, which was very popular then, everybody had to read it in school. I know. Um, the book Catcher in the Rye is sort of a theme throughout Look, I'm Gone, so you can consider them parallel threads. And like you said, J.D. Salinger becomes a fictional character in this book, which I
Yeah,
thought
and by
was
the way,
really done really well.
the crux of the Catcher in the Rye's popularity back in that day was not that people had to read it in school, because it was not assigned in school to read. It was just so popular. It was one of those word of mouth
Well, by the
phenomena.
time I was in high school in the 70s, it was
Yeah,
probably, it had elevated to the reading list.
yeah, it had
But in the
become
60s,
literature.
no.
But back
Yeah.
then, it was just such a phenomenally appealing book to the teenage or pubescent sensibility that kids couldn't wait to read it, and they were electrified by it. And it became, the character at the center of The Catcher in the Rye became their model for how to behave for the next, 20 years of teenagers.
Yeah, and I,
So
I
yeah,
really
it
loved
had,
how these were, I loved how it was intertwined. I thought that you
yeah,
pulled it
thank you.
off really well,
Yeah.
Why did it
which is a
change?
So,
real foundational basis of the book. So if you didn't get that, the book isn't going to work. So
What?
it did. It worked real well.
Why did the
whoa,
why did
whoa.
the popularity fade of Catcher in the Rye then?
It didn't fade. It still sells a million copies a year or something like that.
He
Yeah,
never had to write another book that
it's
he
still
didn't want to
widely
write.
popular.
I never read
He
it.
never had to do anything the rest of his life.
I never read that. I've never read it. This episode is brought to you by McIlvaney Financial Group. Their advisors bring a depth of knowledge and experience that allow them to serve their clientele with care, ensuring their financial needs are met now and in the future. Personally, I'm not saying cash is worthless, but you can see what's happening. It's worth less every year. Gold is the opposite. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to www.mcilvaney.com/coffeeandamike.
Well, I don't know how you missed it, Mikey.
That was one book that you could have a career on.
Yeah,
One and
yeah,
done.
yeah. He did publish more books, but they were nothing like that, and they were nothing like the phenomenon of that, and so that what happened to J.D. Salinger plays a part in the novel Look, I'm Gone.
Sure.
The kind of the sad fate of J.D. Salinger. Although I didn't go into the whole bit about his romantic life with all these teenage girls that he was romancing throughout his life,
You
which is a
kind of
whole other
obliquely
story.
referenced it. You referenced it with the soda shop kids.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's some reference to it, but it's pretty oblique, and it does not play really a major role in the story. But I won't give away more than that.
But when you look at that era, though, and you look at people like Jerry Lee Lewis
Yeah,
and what's his name, uh, playing the guitar on his knees. What's his
Jimi Hendrix,
No, the before that,
Peter
black
Townsend.
black singer,
Oh, no, not Bo Diddley.
Chuck Berry?
Chuck Berry, Johnny
Chuck
B.
Berry,
Good.
right?
Yeah,
Right. So the idea of like romancing a 14-year-old was not exactly unheard of.
no. And in fact, Jerry Lee Lewis actually married his 13-year-old cousin.
Right. That's why
And
they
it
called
was
him the
almost a
killer.
career-wrecking move for him.
They called him the killer. He had a few wives and girlfriends that died mysteriously.
Yeah.
Imagine your nickname
Oh
is
my
the
God.
killer.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway,
I didn't know that. He had a couple wives that died, Jerry Lee Lewis?
I believe so.
yeah.
Look it
Yeah,
up, Mike.
Well, he's not.
yeah.
Is
She
he?
fell.
It must be on Grokkopedia.
Well,
But
uh,
I think in a larger sense, I think that it's hard to sell these today. I think that
Yeah,
the times are moving on, and people are into click, 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 and just the I love having a paper book. If the whole grid goes down and you're not in a flood in Tennessee or North Carolina or a fire like California, then these are going to last for our children's lives. So,
yeah.
somebody can pull these, and that gives me that's for me one of the optimistic things about writing these is that somebody can pull them off of the shelf. Grandpa wrote that back in the olden days. I wonder what
Hmm.
it's about.
Hmm.
When all the smartphones in the world are going to be like square hockey pucks. Like, Grandpa said that they used to have pictures on these, but I don't believe him.
He could put a cocktail on it, though.
Right. You can skip it off. You can skip them across the lake.
he had 7 wives, Jerry Lee Lewis, and he died in 2022.
Uh-huh.
And he was Jerry Falwell's first cousin. And they played piano together when they were kids.
Hmm.
So one went into straight into music and one went into religious infotainment.
Yeah.
But they
Not
were
that
first
different.
but they were first cousins who were raised like brothers. And when they were like 11, they were like banging out duets on the piano. Like who can play piano better? Imagine.
I didn't know Jerry Falwell, or what was it, Jerry Falwell?
Jerry
Right.
Falwell,
Yeah, Jerry. I didn't know that Jerry Falwell could even play the piano.
when they were kids, he probably didn't need it. He went
Oh,
into the Bible was a better prop.
yeah. Hmm.
But that's what I've heard. Grokkopedia may correct me.
He said he was worth 10 to 15 million when he died, Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yeah, well, that figures. He had a good long career.
Yeah. Is it easier for you, Jim, would like to write a book like that, like during that period where you don't have smartphones, you don't have technology? Probably easier to tell a story that way, right?
I don't know. I've done both. I've kept up with uh, some of my more recent books have all that kind of crap in them, and I adapt okay. No, it isn't easier to tell a story really. It's just different.
It's interesting though to write in period, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I've done that. In fact, we were talking off camera about the Philadelphia botanist William Bartram exploring the St. Johns River and in Florida in the very early 1800s when there was nothing there. And I was inspired by reading about Bartram and other early American naturalists to write a novel that was set in 1805, I believe, about these two bumbling botanists who are sent into the southern wilderness by Thomas Jefferson to find something that's not there. Um, Thomas Jefferson, it's a long story I won't go into, but um, they didn't know much about what was going on in the interior of North America. And when Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark out to go to reach the Pacific, he gave them instructions to keep their eyes peeled for mastodons because Jefferson and a lot of other educated people thought that there were probably large unknown animals out in the American interior. Um, the When Jefferson was at Monticello, his fellow farmers in the surrounding area used to bring him things like boxes of bones. And one farmer brought him this box of bones that Jefferson pored over, and he was a member of the International Natural Philosophy Gang. These are the early scientists, sort of the larval scientific community of Western Civ. And he got this box of bones from a farmer, and he thought it was a species previously unknown, which he named Megalonyx, because this was also the great age of taxonomy, when Carl Linnaeus in Sweden started this system for identifying the genus and species of animals. So it became a great privilege and honor to name a species. So Jefferson named this animal Megalonyx and theorized that it was a giant lion. And a few months later, he got a publication from Europe that said it was a scientific paper from France that said the French naturalist Georges Cuvier had found an identical skeleton in Paraguay, and he had identified it correctly as a giant sloth. So Jefferson sends my two characters out into the wilderness to find a giant sloth and bring it back. Well, Lewis and Clark are going out to the Pacific to discover the Pacific Ocean. And that's the premise of my book, An Embarrassment of Riches, published, I think, in 1985. And it's a comedy. And of course, my characters never really catch a giant sloth because they're not there. But they do have numerous misadventures. They're captured by river pirates on the Ohio River. And then subsequently, my characters and the pirates who captured them are all captured by the Shawnee Indians. And they escape the Shawnee Indians during an eclipse of the sun. And they're back on the river, and they end up at a strange place in the Tennessee River where a, a French emigre from the Revolution has established this log castle floating in the middle of the Tennessee River. And on each side of the river, he's running these hemp plantations with black slave labor and Choctaw Indian overseers. And it turns out that he's a Frenchman who's left France during the Revolution, and now it's a few years after that. It's a couple of decades after that. And he's hiding on board his floating log mansion the son of King Louis XVI, the Dauphin, the crown prince, who is now a grown man, but something of a kind of an imbecile. And so they have adventures with him, and eventually they're back on the river, and they finally end up not far from you, Matt, in the vicinity of Biloxi, Mississippi, on the Gulf Coast, where they've discovered a tribe of blue-eyed, blonde-haired Indians who are wearing ruffed collars and speaking in iambic pentameter. And it turns out that they're the descendants of the lost colony of Roanoke, and they have forgotten who they are. They don't know that they're the descendants of a lost colony of Englishmen, but they're at war with all the other tribes in the neighborhood and with the Spaniards who are constantly patrolling the coast.
So what year does this take place?
1805.
And what Roanoke was like 150 years before that?
That was in the 1600s, I believe, or 1500s. 1580 or something like that.
Way in the back of my mind that it'll never happen, and if anybody else writes it, it's fine. I love alternate history,
Yeah.
and there's some great writers in alternate history and like embellished history.
Yeah.
But I wish that there was somebody to write about the Vikings getting to North America, but at a better place, where they were well received.
Yeah.
If they had just sailed a little bit further south, if Vikings had landed in Long Island,
Yeah.
They would have brought the wheel and iron making and all of these things.
They would have been playing polo by 1600.
But before Christianity, they could have opened up America before they were even Christianized.
Yep.
And
oh well,
we're off to the races. But the Southeast, the history in the Southeast, everybody does tons of all the movies, maybe because it's easy to film. The spaghetti westerns were in Italy and Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Then Hollywood, they filmed out west. But some of the biggest things that happened in American history, like the Choctaw Wars, the Davy Crockett, Andrew Jackson era, which is like Mississippi and Alabama, there's no movies on that.
Yeah, very little.
Just none.
Yeah. The original Walt Disney Davy Crockett movie or series did feature a lot about the Red Sticks and that war.
There's some
But
stuff later that like even um in Mark Twain's books, and and it's funny, the Duke and the Dolphin, right, in that.
yeah, yeah, the
But
Duffin.
that side story. But the that the traders and the riverboats, you don't see much of that. The Revenant, which is a fictionalized version with
DiCaprio.
DiCaprio, it's like, stay on the boat. It's just like Apocalypse Now. Stay on the boat. Don't
Yeah.
get off the boat. I I was watching that and I was flashing back to Apocalypse Now. Stay on the boat.
Yeah.
You've got a floating fort. Don't go anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that whole era, the river boats and that exploration, the Southeast was opened up, and it was in many ways not America's proudest moment in terms of those wars. They were like wars of extinction, man. They were like
Yeah, and they eventually just moved the Cherokees, straight out of Georgia all the way to Oklahoma.
but the actual wars in the early part of the 19th century to make Mississippi safe for white men, they were brutal,
Yeah.
and Davy Crockett and them were part of it. But yeah, that whole episode, I was out on the a local creek with my son last weekend while the fall colors are really great. I actually posted something on YouTube for the first time in years, but you know, just with a little outboard motorboat, creeks that don't see anybody in a year. I mean, nobody, where the trees are on both sides. That was a lot of the South. That was, Indians paddling canoes. From you used the term before, hummock. The like an island in the middle of swamp or other,
Yeah,
or a
grassy.
river, just a low dry area. But yeah, the whole and North Florida in particular, this whole Southeast, full of springs. So this really was an ideal place for human habitation. They had to make some accommodations though, because of the mosquitoes and so forth. So they I guess they didn't worry about dying of lung cancer because you could die of so many other things. But to keep mosquitoes away, they'd always have like a smudge fire going. So in your TP or Wiki Up or whatever they had, you'd be breathing smoke all the time.
Hmm.
That or mosquitoes. But they probably weren't worried about lung cancer at 50 if you weren't going to make it to, 40.
Yeah.
But deer everywhere, water everywhere, food growing everywhere. Ideal habitat. The American Southeast really is, it's a wonderful place. I wonder what it's going to look like in 100 years. Who's going to populate it, and is there going to be an electrical grid, or is it going to be back to canoes and paddles? I mean,
There was a novel set in Florida called Fiscadoro. I forget the name of the writer who wrote it. Came out about 20, 25 years ago.
I did read
And
that.
yeah, it was
On your recommendation, yeah.
it was an apocalyptic novel of a future Florida scene well past the kind of economic collapse.
Yeah.
And that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, because when people talk about Florida, I always have to say what part of Florida, because Florida above Orlando, which is the I-4 from like Daytona Beach to Tampa, the north part of Florida is not built out. There's still plenty of, Florida at one point had more cattle than Texas,
Mhm.
because, well, in an acre of Florida grassland, you could have 10 times the cattle of an acre of, dry Texas cattle country. So all of that territory, Gainesville, University of Florida, Tallahassee, all of that is buildable land. When you go below Orlando, it's basically a swamp with an archipelago. So everybody from south of Orlando is essentially living on a rimland, like an archipelago with a lagoon that's the Everglades. So there's millions and millions of people in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, Naples, that whole area, but there's no more land. They're out of land. and the water has to be piped into them. They've got a big nuke plant south of Miami, but if anything goes haywire in Florida, south of Orlando is going to be totally untenable.
Oh dear.
But yeah, because they just so many people crammed into a strip of land where everything that they eat is brought in on a truck. The power is brought in, the water is brought in. It's a totally artificial environment.
By the way, that
It's
book,
like Phoenix in a different way.
that book Fiscadora was by Dennis Johnson, one N in Dennis.
Yeah, I was just gonna I was just gonna say that. Yeah, Florida and Arizona, south of Orlando, there's a lot of parallels. And you know I'll tell you though, I wonder if this is happening in Florida and other parts of the Southeast. They are building so much in Phoenix right now, it's insane. Tearing up what's left of the desert.
Housing is staying on the market here in Florida. I think that and I like it. I watch the real estate people and that you've had on. When real estate turns over and starts heading down, it's one of the biggest drivers of the overall real world economy, not New York financialization economy, Nvidia $1 trillion or whatever. At the retail economy level, houses staying on the market is like a depression signal, or at least a recession signal, because you can't trade your house and move when your house is worth less and you owe more. When you're upside down, and when the average mortgage holder becomes upside down, they're really screwed for moving, and it like locks up the entire market. It just becomes impossible to buy a new house leveraging the greater value of your present house when your present house is worth less. So houses down here are staying on the market for a year, and so building is stopping, and there's I saw from Charlotte, all the illegal aliens being off the work site means these big office buildings aren't going to be built. Who is going to go into those office buildings if they had been finished? In Florida, because Florida is on a little bit different of a time scale, because sometimes you can have a hurricane hit at the same time as a recession. If you go to places like Daytona Beach, you'll see all these dinosaur construction projects that you can tell 20 years ago was somebody's golden dream, and there's a 30-story building, huge condo, never got finished, and now it's rusting and crumbling.
You see a lot of that in Mexico.
Because the gamble that people are taking, it's like when you build an aircraft carrier, you design it, you finally get funding, you build the aircraft carrier, all the conditions have changed.
Yeah, that's exactly what goes on in real estate, because it takes so long to line up the financing, and the permitting process is so time consuming, especially for large projects, that it can be 48 months or 60 months from the time you first apply and get the project underway to the time that you're breaking ground. And by then the economic conditions may have changed drastically.
And then in Florida, you can have even a minor hurricane hit, and it like throws like a 90-day kneecap into the project. And guys that are already shoestringing, and the financiers of these projects who are already on short terms they're not getting the 90 days. Their suppliers are saying cash on delivery, and then you throw a hurricane in and they're dead. And so these buildings, by the time nobody's going to buy them, because 5 years later they're rusting before they're even finished, and they are blight on the skyline. So right now in Florida, the real estate market is absolutely turned over. Houses are being taken off the market by the realtors because it looks terrible when it says this house has been on the market for 280 days. So they'll like try to take it off the market, rebrand it, and try to do some kind of ledger domain so that it doesn't look like the same guy is putting it on the market again. so they can start fresh like it's a new listing. But when housing prices start going down, it's a real bad sign in the at least in Florida and probably in Arizona too.
Well, that's what I was
I
telling.
know Las Vegas is like that big time.
I was telling a friend of mine in Ohio, because we were talking about, I'm so freaking perturbed. If anybody listens to me regularly about what this Brown Stadium, this new football stadium that they're building, and they're putting in the suburbs, and it's a $2.4 billion project with $600 million subsidized taxpayer money that the governor, DeWine, found some type of fund with the $600 million sitting in it that they're going to use to start this project. It's a dome, which I laugh because they don't even play in January because the team sucks. So what the hell do they need a dome for? And people are all, they're like, some are excited about this. And I said, well, let me just add this. I said, my thing with it too, though, because of living here, because I got here in 2006 in Phoenix and then the housing market crashed in 2008. To your point, Matt, they built off-ramps for freeways that they just stopped. They never finished. So I could see a scenario where they could start the stadium and, people back there, they don't know, they weren't hit as hard as we were in Phoenix or in Florida, where, the property values went from $500,000 to $200,000 in 2008 here. Like it was unbelievable. So people were walking away. That was one of the reasons why they were walking away from their homes, or the main reason. So the idea of like projects getting started and then just stop. And I'll give you one more. They built an outdoor mall here, and it was going to be the mall. It was going to have Saks, Bloomingdale's, Nordstrom. Those were all going to be anchors in this shopping center. Housing market 2008, the crash, they all backed out. So all the small businesses that opened up in there thinking they're going to be ahead of the curve, they were left there to die.
Yeah, and I don't know which of your guests, because I'm not good at keeping track of that, but somebody that was on talking about, I think it was mainly real estate. And I never even thought about this. So your podcast, other podcasts are really great for just opening my eyes to things, and everybody in general, that we would have never thought about. These school bond issues can put an entire town into a crushing debt, a doom loop debt. And the entire bond issue can be rammed through by a handful of politicians that are involved in some kind of graft. In-laws got the construction company, whatever. But the people that are in a county, they may go to vote, and maybe only 10% of the people vote. Do you vote to, have great schools in, bum squat county, or are you a troglodyte that doesn't want great schools? It's like, sure, I want great schools. So you check yes, I vote yes for the bond issue. The whole thing gets put on the ballot by like 20 hustlers. It's on the ballot. Only 10% of people go to vote in this, off midterm special election. Who votes in them? Who goes out to vote for them? People that are paid to vote, that are rounded up to vote. But the whole county is now going to be on the hook for billions of dollars that are completely can never be paid back. This funding is going to be a complete mirage, supposedly to pay the teachers more or whatever, but we're just adding debt on top of debt on top of debt. And when just like the real estate market, when it's a rising tide, all boats are lifted, and you can buy lots of condos, and everybody thinks they're going to get rich, leveraging on the way up. But when you get into a deflationary spiral, and nobody can afford these things, in an inflationary spiral, it's like, great, we're going to pay off our debt with cheaper dollars. In a deflation, which we may be going into first, in a deflation, you can't pay anything, and you go bust, and then it's the great taking time, where you find out who really owns the paper. When people default, it's not like there's a jubilee declared. Some greater entity comes in and says, guess what? We own your county now.
And how about them inflating the property value, so they can collect more in taxes? And that took me back to here too, because appraisers, they were hitting the targets of what they needed of values of these homes in order to get them, refinance and do home equity lines. I don't think that was by accident. And now you've got local school districts. Jim, I don't know if you've heard the story at all. It was Mitch Wexler.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I've heard it.
And he's the whistleblower in Texas. But you have to assume majority of counties across America are doing it, especially in the cities where the big cities are.
Yeah, well, and the schools are such a terrible problem too, because so much of that money that's being raised is really just going to the teachers union for pensions, to cover pensions, and it's a terrible racket. But we've become a racketeering nation, and the Democratic Party is mostly responsible for the political racketeering, I think, especially the stuff associated with the schools. But it's pretty bad.
All the way down to the local level. Oh, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Well, the local level is the school tax level. That is the local level. It doesn't get more local than that.
And according to Mitch, some of these areas in Texas, they can't pay it back. It's beyond.
Yeah.
I think Austin is $2 billion, maybe the deficit.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Remember, people get what they deserve, not what they expect.
At some point, it will jam up because you can say, "Well, there will be the great taking," and you'll find out that some bank in New York owns, your county. But how do they take possession? Are they going to cut off your power? Are they going to, or will there be a kind of a peasant revolt and a demand for a jubilee? A clearing of debts.
Yeah, it presents enormous legal problems.
But you also wonder at some point, will the state come in and stitch it together to
How?
I never thought any of this would make it this far, and they keep figuring out ways to prolong all this.
Yeah, I like the saying about was it Michael Burry? The Nvidia short, the big short on Nvidia.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody said, markets can stay irrational longer than Michael Burry can stay solvent.
That's an old line. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, he put like a $800 million bet on shorting Nvidia. And I'm not sure what the status of that is because it's like, puts and options and crazy stuff.
Yeah.
He just started a Substack.
Yeah.
Couple days ago. I became a free subscriber to it.
I kind of think he was just sending out a warning. It was like him shooting up a flare. People have to pay attention to this. If I do this, they're going to have to talk about Nvidia's real worth. But, hey, somebody I heard this today said Bitcoin's going to 10 million and Nvidia is going to be, like $100 trillion company. Every employee at Nvidia is worth like $100 million.
Well, that's the contrast of all this stuff too, right? I mean, and quoting Dave Collum, that you can't kill the signal, but you could turn up the noise. And I've heard both sides of this. I don't know. I mean, the Bitcoin people over the last 2 weeks. I mean, the one girl, she got a book out, ironically, and said something like, "If you're worried about what you own, then you don't know what you own." I think is what she said in relation to Bitcoin as the price of it was falling.
What does she own?
Bitcoin. She's a Bitcoin. Yeah.
No, but what does she own? Something she has inside of her smartphone. There's digits inside her smartphone.
Jim, say that again.
She owns a chain of code. In other words, she owns a bunch of math. Bitcoin is math.
But you know what, though? They got a rebuttal for that. If there was a Bitcoin person on here, they would have a response, and they'd say, well, what is your money in the bank?
It's the good math.
Yeah. I think I would go long on Confederate bonds. They're printed on really pretty paper with great lithography.
Well, it has been shaken out a lot lately, and let's see where it's at right now here on the indexes. Coming right up. The Dow is up 663, but Bitcoin looks like it's 4 o'clock, so they've changed things around. Let's go to the 5-day here.
Showing 87,000.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin
but it had a low. I'm sorry.
But Bitcoin really came into its own after the great financial crisis, right?
Yes.
So when we're looking at long term for Bitcoin, people are saying, well, it's done several 30% declines and then it goes up, beyond way beyond that. They look at the graph, but the graph only goes back to after the great financial crisis. Bitcoin has never been tested when
Hmm.
people are like, honey, we're going to lose our house or we got to sell our Bitcoin.
Hmm.
House or Bitcoin. See, it's never had to go through the rapids. It's always been on flat water. It's never had
Hmm.
to paddle over the rapids.
Hmm.
So this may, if we're going into a financial downturn where people are going to be saying, house or Bitcoin, honey, what do you want to keep? You want to live in a
They're
car
also
and say we're Bitcoin millionaires, or do you want to keep our house and sell our Bitcoin?
they're
So
also going to be discovering what's real and what's not real, and that's a big problem for Bitcoin.
yeah, and I forget. Oh, it was Parallel Mike. Parallel Systems had a great show and Substack article on the origins of Bitcoin, how tied in Jeffrey Epstein was to this. It's an Intel. It was Intel driven the whole way. This is like how can we get the rubes to believe in something that's completely owned and operated by the NSA and CIA with all our backdoor codes into it, but the rubes are going to go for it whole hog, and they
Hmm.
have. And people will say, Matt, you're just not a believer. You're a mocker. Bitcoin's going to 10 million, like your guest this morning said, or yesterday. Bitcoin 10 million. Nvidia, every employee at Nvidia is worth $150 million in I forget how he put it, but the worth of every Nvidia employee is like, 200 houses in terms of their productivity. And I mean, there are true believers like that. I don't know. I'm trying to think, how do we get out of not having a depression? And will it be all deflation, or are they going to try to inflate it?
Well, that was the
That'll
argument that was the argument that, I mean, not the argument, but the other side of it. And we're talking about my conversation with David Levinson, and he was saying that, and it was very technical for me, but so I might be getting some of this wrong, my interpretation of it, but how the real estate market is going to lead us to the golden age, and there will not be a GFC 2.0. Now I'm with you. I don't see how it can be avoidable at this point, but
I don't see how just dropping the prime rate, how is that going to be a panacea? I don't see it. I think we're so far gone into the end of the debt cycle that there's no way around it now. What trick can they pull out? What rabbit can they pull out of the hat? I mean, Europe seems to be hell bent on war. The leaders of Europe just,
Well,
you
they're just
know,
talking. They're just talking shit because they have no ability whatsoever to prosecute a war. So they're just blowing smoke up our ass.
yeah, like Ursula von der Leyen, her like 5 point program, point number one is borders must not be changed by war. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
all
good
people
luck.
must be fed.
Yeah.
Peace
Well,
must
it's a great
prevail.
mystery what's going on in Europe right now. It's a mystery that the citizens of the member states of the EU accept Ursula von der Leyen as some sort of a credible leader because she's completely unelected. She's
Yep.
kind of appointed by the whatever I guess the EU Parliament or just maybe some committee of the EU Parliament. And she has no mandate for anything, and yet she's blowing smoke about going to war and doing all these things that are enormously expensive, and they ain't going to happen. So,
And impossible. They
as
don't
far as
have
I'm
the
concerned, it's
energy.
only a matter of time before the EU collapses or is just crushed by the populations of countries who don't want it to exist anymore. Don't want
and
it.
and NATO and NATO. But in Germany and in Britain, which in some respects are like the biggest countries, even though I know the UK had Brexit, but in just Europe writ large, the biggest powerhouses still, I would say, France, Britain, and Germany. and France is completely lost to Islam. It's a hopeless case. There's no chance when people say we have to send them back. There is zero chance of sending Muslims out of France. There would be a civil war with AK-47s before that ever happened. And in Germany and in the UK, even though they've been pushing for censorship and haven't quite managed to get like an EU-wide or an actual censorship law, they're just doing it by fiat in the sense that they are arresting people in Germany and the UK for social media posts against immigration. People are being arrested for saying, we're done with these with foreign rapists. That can get you put in jail. So the freedom of speech and thought is gone in Europe. Those are the leading lights. France, Germany, Britain. You cannot say what you think in those countries. They are being taken over by the invaders. The center of gravity has shifted between the hardcore left. It's everybody calls it the Red-Green Alliance. Red over there for communism, green for Islam. The Red-Green Alliance, your local Labor Party plus the Muslim new contingent. They may be second and third generation, but they're going to vote as a bloc. That's now a working majority. And you're not going to vote your way out of that in Germany, France, or England. It's either going to be, they're going to be Muslim countries in 20 years, or there's going to be a bloody civil war. But they've way past the point of saying, we're going to send the new Germans home.
They may be completely demoralized at this point and unable to act in their own self-interest.
Very demoralized and afraid to speak about it. So you don't know how, you can't have a big AFD meeting. If you have a big AFD meeting, the police escort Antifa in to beat the crap out of you, and you can be standing there peacefully. You get the water cannons, and the police escort in Antifa. So the Europe is gone. As far as I'm concerned, we should be out of NATO, period. We have nothing in common anymore with Europe the way it's being run, unless we're going over there to liberate it for the third time, which I don't see that happening either.
Yeah.
Or some other people are saying at some point, the last Europeans may be begging the Russians to come in. Come in and do what has to be done to restore Western Christian tradition, as opposed to I think, and I'm not joking about this. I don't know how many more years King Charles has, but I'll bet dollars to donuts that he's going to announce that he's converted to Islam.
Oh dear.
Oh, he is. Can you imagine any Muslim leader, king of Saudi Arabia, coming to Europe and then dressing in a Crusader outfit with a big goofy smile, like, here I am, I'm dressed, we're at the Crusader cosplay. I've got my big cross. I got my big Crusader sword. That's King Charles. He goes to Saudi Arabia. He's got the big goofy smile. He's an absolute simp. Even 30 years ago, you can look this up. Klaus Schwab and Prince Charles. He's got the same no chin, goofy grin. Like, I can't believe I'm with these important people. I'm just this idiot inbred king, prince, soon maybe king someday. But he's there with Klaus Schwab at WEF meetings. This is like in the 80s. He's always been a suck up to power. He's never had confidence in himself. He was always, the Mr. King, Mr. Prince to the Queen, and the closest he got to real power was going to places like Davos. He goes to Saudi Arabia. He puts on the full headgear, swinging the Saudi sword. He's like, constantly. He says more about Ramadan than he won't say a word about Christmas. He'll talk about Islam, how important and central it is to English life. The guy's going to announce he's converting. And I think he may have already done it. He'll announce it's already happened. So you talk about demoralization. He's one of the few people that could maybe come out on a balcony and say, We have to stop this. I've got to save my
Well, it
realm
might
from
be
this.
up to William, his son, to do that.
But I don't think that William's not in a position
Not
unless
now he's
Charles
not.
slips on a banana peel.
Well, sooner or later, Charles is going to slip on a banana peel.
But
Yeah.
I think he's going to announce he's converted to Islam before that. And he's going to recommend everybody convert to Islam for the
We'll
sake of
stand by
Social
on that. They
Security.
actually, if that happens, the English people might just walk into Buckingham Palace and just, string his ass up.
But by then,
There's
most of the
still a lot
police
of
are,
English people left. There's
yeah,
still, I
they're
mean,
so
it's hard to believe, but they,
demoralized.
they are still a majority in their country, and they're getting more and more seriously pissed off about what's going
Well, I
on.
hope so. They should be.
So
They
we'll,
should
we'll
be.
we'll stand by on that.
Yeah.
That ain't going to play well.
I
No, but I can see it happening.
I look back at that, even from 2009, 2010, in relation to EU and Greece. I remember watching those protests of people in Athens just enraged, like just wanting out of the EU. And here we are sitting 15 years later, 15, 16 years later, and they can't get out.
Yeah.
It was
It's
never
very
going
it's
to.
very mysterious what's happened to the psyche of the consensual collective psyche of the citizens of these countries. They're just rolling over and dying. And maybe there is such a thing as the zeitgeist, and it's turned really sour and rotten, and that people can't help themselves. I don't know.
Yeah,
Uh,
something that's maybe I don't know if it's a turning point or if it's a one-off by like a boat captain, but there's video of Greek like Coast Guard cutter, like 80-footer, physically blocking the rubber boats that, these Soros groups get these container loads of rubber boats sent in from China. So these rubber boats have no military or sporting purpose. They're purpose built in Chinese factories to carry lots of people at a slow speed on calm water from France to England or from Turkey to Greece. So they're the easiest thing in the world if you have the will, going back to like the camp, Russ Bale's Camp of the Saints. If you have no will, then you can be invaded by people walking across your Texas border. When you have Biden, Texas puts up barbed wire and Biden sends his people to like tear the barbed wire down to tell the world, keep coming in. Well, you can flip that very easily if you have the will to just say no, like Trump saying no more people crossing, and it stops. Or the Greeks, I don't know if it was a one-off. For all I know, the captain's been, court-martialed, but it's very easy to block a rubber boat full of people. You just don't let it move forward. You just nudge
mhm,
into it until it decides I'm going back.
mhm.
And you don't even need to shoot anybody or sink their boat. You can just physically push them back. And then when that happens, Turkey no longer is a pass-through. So countries are happy to be a pass-through as long as the ultimate target is open. So France is a pass-through. It doesn't bother Macron if there's, 20,000 people in camps at Calais, if every week 1,000 of them keep going to England as 1,000 more show up. So it's really no problem. They get to sell food. There's there's food trucks there, and there's charitable NGOs setting up kitchens that are all being paid for by USAID type money. But as soon as England would say, that's it, we're no longer sending our Coast Guard to quote unquote rescue them. So every day, 500 or 1,000 military age men get into 20 or 30 rubber boats, sail out into the English Channel, and they're rescued by the Royal Navy or the Royal National Lifeboat Institute, sort of like a quasi Coast Guard. So they've only got to go 10 miles out into the English Channel, and then they're rescued. Another 30 military age fighting men taken straight. Now they're putting them on British military bases. Britain has a whole constellation of like reserve bases. So they're opening up these reserve bases and putting military age Muslim fighting age men on British bases in British hotels. And it's the easiest thing in the world to stop if you don't have a traitor running the show. So if Trump kind of showed the world you can stop it. And maybe Greece now is trying to tell Turkey, we're going to stop it. And France and Turkey stop it when, instead of getting the safety relief valve of those people going to the final welfare country destination, the USA or England, if they're piling up in France, then France goes to their own border and says, we need to do something about this. But the whole EU has been a disaster from start to finish. It was never going to work trying to put Clydesdales, donkeys, cows, sheep, all in a harness with one currency. That could never work. Everybody's known that forever. You cannot have the Greek economy and the German economy at parity, with one currency. That could never work, and it has never worked. You can't have Italy, Spain, Sweden, Germany all with the same money. It can't work. And then the big deal of the EU was what they call the Schengen Agreement. This was like a critical part of it. We won't need to have a passport to go from France to Germany to Italy anymore, because the EU is going to control our external border, which was always a lie. And that's why countries like Hungary and Poland are on the outs with Brussels, because they actually defend their own border. Brussels literally tells Hungary and Poland, you're not allowed to protect your border. The EU Treaty on Human Rights is supreme. And the EU Treaty on Human Rights says if 1,000 military-age men from Syria want to come in every day, you have to welcome them. I mean, that's a treasonous.
That's just fucking stupid, and if that apparently is the case, and apparently it is the case that these countries want to whirl around the drain and commit suicide. So
they are
that's
committing
what they're
suicide.
doing.
And being replaced at the same time.
Yeah.
The birth rate in Europe is like 1.2 per woman. You need like 2.1 just to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that are coming in have 5 children. By the time Fatima is 20, she's already got 3 kids.
Yeah.
And Fiona in Britain may have 1 kid when she's 35.
Mm-hmm.
Or not. So they're being replaced at a level that is absolutely, it's a cataclysm. It's genocidal. If you just work the math, it's not like, oh, Matt, it's not so bad. I was in England. I still saw plenty of English people. If you look at who's in the schools, if you take pictures of British schools, it's like find the white kid. There's no white kids in the schools because Fatima has 5 kids and the English woman has 1.
I think that the governments of England or the UK, France, and Germany are going to be overthrown in 2026.
But then
I think it's going to be like 1848 all over again.
But what does that look like? Because the Muslims, once they stake their claim, whether it's like Dearborn or Minneapolis, they don't say, all right, you win, we're going home. They have planted the flag where where the call to prayer is heard is now part of the Ummah.
Well, we have yet to see what happens when life becomes a little bit less comfortable for them in these places. What we've witnessed in the last 20 years is how they act when they're living comfortably.
On welfare.
On welfare and on protection from the government and even protection from, having their feelings hurt on Twitter.
And a lot
but
of
if that all changes, a lot can change. I think it's going to be ugly, but I don't think that it's going to continue the way it has.
But you can do a lot with the immigrants, but you can't make Fiona have 3 kids. At least in Hungary and in Poland, they have gone to what they call a natalist policy. If you have 2 kids, no income tax for life, right? Home subsidy. And instead of thinking that some guy from Somalia with a 68 IQ is going to be working at the old folks home to take care of your mother, that's never going to happen. The guy's going to be a welfare hole, black hole forever.
Frankly, I don't think it's worth rehashing any of this anymore. It's too self-evident and obvious, and I think we've covered the waterfront with this.
I wanted to tell you guys, as we were talking about Bitcoin earlier and censorship, it made me think of a story that I had on with my Mary Tally Bowden last week, and she put on she put on she put on Twitter a year ago, or X a year ago, about Bitcoin, saying if I can't fill up my gas tank with it, I don't want to, I don't want to participate. And Jack Dorsey, who was the creator of Twitter, quote tweets her, quote posts her, and says it's time. Reference to Bitcoin. She responds back with, "Didn't you have me banned on this platform?"
Yeah.
She had created like 10 accounts. Well, during his time that he was running Twitter, they had to have different emails. Every time that their account got destroyed, you had to find a different email to create another account and another account and another account. And somebody made a comment about, why would you bring that up now? And she's like, I'd like an apology for him banning her on X.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a funny story.
At least Elon Musk let me back on with a new account.
But aren't you
Are
getting
you on it?
Yeah, I'm on X with a new account, starting from 0 when Musk came in.
I've had the same account for a while, but I just, I never use it myself. I read a lot of other people's Twitter feeds, but I don't do any commenting of my own, really. Once in a
I
while,
do, because for me, it's like reading the paper in the morning. It's like some guy that would have the, New York Times, Washington Post, local newspaper.
Yeah.
That's my morning coffee reading.
Yeah, I understand.
Commenting
To some extent, I just don't get how the thing works. And if I see a comment by somebody that I have strong feelings about, and I notice that there are already like 716 replies to it, I don't even see the point in writing a reply.
Oh no, there's no point in writing a reply unless it's one of the first 5 or 10.
Yeah.
There's no point. But I'll quote tweet. I'll put a quote on top of somebody else's thing, so mine starts fresh.
Uh-huh.
Well,
I
instead
wish
of
I
just
understood
instead of
it better.
replay, do quote, and then just put your own words of wisdom on top of somebody that's already been seen 5,000 times.
Yeah.
I like it from a standpoint of prospecting tool, of connecting with people, like for my show. And it's like, as I change into different interests, there's a lane for it.
Sure.
And X is perfect for that. Like now I'm like really into the finance, economics. I don't understand a lot of it, most of it. So that's why I, keep going down that rabbit hole. Hence, if anybody listens to yesterday, it was way over my head for an hour and a half.
What was his name?
David Levinson.
Levinson. You need Levinson and Gamble with a chess timer. 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
But it's great from that aspect of getting information. But the problem is, though, and I've fallen for this too, continuing to, you see something and you're like, you have to like analyze the account and be like, all right, where is this from? Who is this? Just because they have a high number attached to them.
Yeah, but with very few exceptions, there's only a few people like John Galt that come onto your show without their face. So one of the values of your podcast is that the guys that come on, they've got a name and a face. They're putting it out there. Maybe they've got their own podcast or some other angle, but they are at least willing to get into the arena. The three of us, we got our names and faces right here. So that to me makes these podcasts a lot more valuable than just randos on X. But I like X for finding, new news and, like you said, finding new accounts, and then see if they do have a Substack, things like that.
I love Substack.
Is Substack your main feeder now, or
Substack and YouTube? As long as I can stay on YouTube and not get either shadow banned or nuked.
How is Rumble compared to YouTube for
terrible
you in terms of
terrible?
Rumble is terrible.
Terrible.
Well, by the way, out there, listeners, pony up and support Mike Ferris on Substack. He is trying to make a living like every other jamoke in America, and he's doing a good job feeding you new podcasts every day, practically every day. That's a lot. So subscribe to Mike's Substack and help him out.
I appreciate that, Jim.
This show has really expanded in the last 2 years. I remember, 2 years ago, I got emails from you like every couple of weeks. Matt, do you want to go on my show? And I was like, who is this guy? And you wore me down. And I finally And now, this thing is really taken off. I mean, you've got heavy hitters on all the time. I mean, heavy
You
hitters.
two are my heavy hitters, man. What are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah.
I get more
Well,
I get more
speaking
feedback.
of heaviness, speaking of heaviness, since Matt's a military guy, and we're coming to the end of this podcast, I wonder what you think about the big thing that happened last week with the insurrection video led by Alyssa Slotkin, the former CIA analyst from Michigan, and with Colonel or Captain Mark Kelly of the U.S. Navy. Um, it looks like Captain Mark Kelly might be in a little hot water because he's still eligible to be sucked back into the military and court-martialed.
I don't think that they'll risk doing it. I think that we're old enough to remember Oliver North. It's sort of
Hmm.
like the attorney's adage, never ask a question that you don't already know the answer to.
Uh-huh.
So when you back during Iran Contra, showing our age here, you put Ollie North on the stand in his uniform, and he looks great, and he's convincing, right? He flips the script. We're just patriots doing the best we could. So I think that they're going to talk about it, but I don't think they're going to recall him to active duty because he would welcome the spectacle of a televised, you can't handle the truth. You
Uh-huh.
can't risk that kind of a moment.
Uh-huh.
It's like the in football when, at the end of the first half, you got 20 seconds. You could throw a long bomb. You need the touchdown. You'll get it maybe in the second half. You could throw the long bomb. Yeah, but if you throw the long bomb, it might be intercepted and run back the other way. So guys, just take a knee. So I think they're going to take a knee on Kelly because the risk of blowback from a televised court martial, astronaut, hero, savior of the country, willing to speak truth to power. Here comes Captain Mark Kelly versus the evil dictator Trump, who wants to hang and shoot what he's calling seditionists, who are really just patriots. So they're not going to risk it. No
What do you
chance.
think about what do you think of the nature and quality of the act itself,
I think
the
it.
video?
I think it was. I think it probably at this point blew back against the Democrats because it does look like a call to mutiny and sedition. It's like you don't go into battle saying to the privates, "Hey, that colonel's kind of a jerk, and if he blows the whistle too soon, you could all be killed." And just so you know, here in the JAG manual, it says that, if you think it's an illegal order, that is totally sedition.
I think from a tactical point of view, it's also very poor judgment because it requires a certain climate for those kinds of mutinies to even succeed. Namely, you have to be engaged in some war or some action that's deeply unpopular. And there's nothing that the military is doing at the moment that is necessarily deeply unpopular for the military people. In fact, if anything, they've kind of reformed it in a positive way to give these soldiers, a better self-image and a better sense of purpose in what they're doing after the 10-year interlude of trannyism and
Sure.
the feminization of the military.
Yeah,
And all of a sudden,
it also opened them up to saying, how come we have all these CIA spooks? So the person that had 5 passports, now she's like the governor.
yeah, Spamberger.
Why are all these spooks now leading our country?
Yeah.
I mean,
Alyssa Slotkin.
at least in Russia, they're honest about it. They're
Yeah.
not sneaking them in. So I like exposing that.
What I wonder about, maybe you have an opinion about this, is why John Ratcliffe has been sitting in the background being so quiet, and we hear nothing about him reforming the CIA
And
or
well,
calling out
but
people,
it's also
firing
it's
people.
it's Bondi, it's Bongino, it's Patel, it's all of them. They're all, I think, caught in this. It's like what do they call it, a runner standoff? Where the base runner is trapped.
Yeah.
Which way do I go? They can throw the ball either way and tag me out. I mean, it's a tough spot that they're in because what if the Democrats do succeed? Right now, the deep state is up. We're throwing everything we can at the deep state, and the deep state's winning. Comey gets indicted. We got that covered. Throw the indictment out.
I'm not sure that that's not, I'm quite sure that's not gonna stand. I'm quite sure that he's gonna be re-indicted. And that decision by the judge yesterday is going to be thrown out for
I
sure.
hope so. If not, then we don't really have an executive branch.
Well,
We have government by the Lilliputians. Gulliver's tied down, and 1,000 little Lilliputians just, have tied him with a million strings and are poking him every which way.
but that's it. Well, that's what I'm seeing is that that's all they got left is Lilliputians. All they got left is lawfare. They don't have anything left besides lawfare. That's it. And I think that they are going after him. I think the reason that Dan Bongino hasn't resigned is because he is working hard on, cases that are gonna uh, pan out.
Hey, I sure hope so. And aside from your wonderful new novel, which I enjoyed so much, Look,
Thank
I'm
you.
Gone. I would also say, your column yesterday was called what, Sedition and Tradition. So
Sedition,
sedition,
then tradition.
but it ended on a positive Thanksgiving note. We're still in a country that's at peace, you
Yeah.
know, for now, and we can go home and sit down with our liberal in-laws or sisters and brothers and not have a knockdown, drag out fight. We can go to the supermarket and buy a turkey for 49 cents a pound. I mean, which is like free food when you think
Are
about.
you going to be sitting down with your liberal
No,
siblings
no,
or?
no, but I mean, in the past and in a larger
Yeah.
sense. But it's a great country, and we're very lucky to live here when gasoline is affordable. And I mean, it's tough if you're young and you're trying to get into the housing market. It's a terrible time. I understand that, but that maybe things will change that, break that loose. But for now, it's still a great country. You can go to see the ball game, or you can stay home and watch the tube, go for a walk or a bike ride, whatever you want. And nobody's shooting you from a building, like it's Ukraine or somewhere. So we're
Mikey, what are you doing for
very
Thanksgiving?
lucky.
Actually got invited to a couple places this year. So probably go to a friend's house, but they also do. There's an area up north, town called Cave Creek. I went there last year for Christmas, and they had it's a bunch of biker bars and stuff. But they have all these people. One bar in particular will have food, and it's all donation based, and the bar's open. If you want to buy drinks, but they get all these classic cars and motorcycles that come through. I went last year for Christmas. It was really cool. Like it was packed. People just
The,
driving
the
through because
coolest,
the weather's
coolest
so
car show.
beautiful here right now. I mean, it's going to be
Oh, the coolest car
75.
show I ever saw. The coolest car show I ever saw was, I think, in Prescott, Arizona. Car shows are like a thing in Arizona.
Well, the old cars don't rot out there, right?
That's right.
No, the sun beats
That's right.
them, but the nice cars are in the garage,
Sure.
right? So they're not out all day. But this is the time of year. 75 degrees here this week.
Yep.
Whoa, that's nice. How long is that going to last?
It's going to go down we've had a ton of rain. It's going to go down the 60s next week, and then March it'll start to warm up again into the 80s. That's when spring training's kicking off.
Uh-huh.
And April's still somewhat nice, and then it's June is when the extreme starts to come. And then July and
Yeah.
August just suck. And September sucks.
It's not that great in Florida, July, August either, or September.
Yeah.
Jim,
Not too bad.
Jim, what
But we never have to dig our car out from snow.
Yeah, that's true.
Jim, what does Thanksgiving? I mean, this Thanksgiving mean to you?
Well, what does it mean to me? Like I said, in my blog on Monday, I'm grateful to be here still on the planet Earth, and it's a privilege to be alive. I've had an interesting run, and I'm still running. And we're going to have some friends over for Thanksgiving, and so, we're going to kind of reconnect with people we haven't spent a whole lot of time with for a while. And we're cooking, and it's fun and sweet, and I'm looking forward to the whole thing.
Where can people find you, Jim?
I'm at on Substack at Clusterfuck Nation is my blog that comes out every Monday and every Friday by about 9 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, and my new book is called Look, I'm Gone, and it's available on Amazon or your local independent bookseller, and there you have it.
So I'm going to guess, I already know the answer to this, but just to play along here for a second, there will be a blog on Friday. This is not a holiday
Of
weekend
course.
for you.
No, no. I'll be blogging on Friday. Of course I will.
I've said this probably every time I talk to you now, but I got to see it with my own eyes. Jim is one thing about him. People always want to know. We talked about this in our conversations a couple of years ago. Like the key to success, consistency. You don't have to be the most talented, right, Jim? Consistency?
Yeah, although, probably I am, but that's beside the
right. Well,
point.
you're exception, most talented and consistent. But one thing about you,
Let's
I mean,
say
and I saw it.
Showing up is 90%.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I saw the process. I mean, Monday morning you were up, coffee, and bam.
Before you were.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to make any noise. I didn't want to like walk on the floor to screw you up. But no, I mean,
that's
this
all right.
Friday,
No,
this Friday you'll do it, and
Sure. Well, one thing about Thanksgiving is it's generally not like a huge hangover holiday. I mean, people aren't like going, all day long on Thanksgiving. They're, thinking grim thoughts about pilgrims and the like.
The hangover is at the belly line.
Yeah, there you go. The hangover is you got to eat turkey and stuffing for the rest of the week. If you're putting it on the feed.
Matt, what are you doing for the holiday?
You got to loosen that belt, unbutton the pants. I'm not sure yet. We'll probably stay home, have a small turkey, but no big plan, no family reunion. I'm in Florida. Most of my family's scattered over the East Coast. So
Did you guys eat? Don't you eat gator for
No.
Thanksgiving?
No. I think I've eaten gator. I did see an alligator last week on the creek. I did see an alligator.
They don't have McRibs.
That could have been on your table, Matt.
No, a little guy. So anyway, I'm mostly, I should be writing Substack like Jim, but I'm not that motivated. I'm writing a novel that most of my creative juices go in that
What's that one?
direction.
Where's that one going? What is it?
That's set in Ireland a few years from now, where I think Ireland, according to my novel, is the place where the physical pushback begins, and the people say we've had enough. Our leadership is not serving us well. They call Dublin foreign occupied Dublin, or they're not obeying the police anymore, and they're taking matters into their own hands.
Very
But anyway,
timely.
I hope to hope to have it out before it all happens. But all the rest of my books are still available. If you buy them from me, then I'll autograph them through my website or PayPal or. But Amazon is really bad right now. They've switched from ordering cases to go to one direction to ordering onesie twosies all over the place, and it kills you on postage. When you have to, it's really not even worth sending Amazon one book to go to one place. Between the cost of the book, the postage, the mailer, it's like a loss when they're just sending onesie twosies all over the place. So I would recommend going straight to me, and I'll give you a better price than Amazon, and sign them. I'll inscribe them. But anyway, that's my deal, and hopefully early next year I'll have a new book out. We'll see.
Well, guys, I appreciate as always that you guys make yourself available to talk to me, and maybe one of these days, Matt, I'll get to meet you in person like I did Jim this past summer. But I hope you guys both and everybody listening have a great holiday. And for people that like to what Jim said, if you like what I'm doing, comment on YouTube, comment on Rumble, comment on Apple. I read all the comments, and if you have the financial means and you like the show. Consider becoming a paid subscriber on Substack for early access to everything. So, guys, can't wait for the next one.
Thank you. Happy
Okay,
Thanksgiving.
Mic drop.
Have a good one, everybody.
Mic drop.